course, they get less interviewed about it because the geopolitics is trumping everything right now for, I think, good reasons. But I think behind the scenes, companies, there's no hesitation. If anything, the movement is accelerating. I'm co-chair of this CEO Climate Alliance. So this is 126 CEOs have said they're going to be net zero. They're going to report on it. They're going to be SBTI compatible. And the amount of work they're doing is huge. And I think what's going to be revolutionary in the next 2-3 years is that they don't just work on their own, footprint, scope 1 and 2, but they will send signal to all of their suppliers, which is called scope 3 upstream. And we've worked actually together on certain rules and how to help. A lot of suppliers are small and medium-sized companies. They don't know how to do it. So we have a lot of resources to help them. But these signals will be massive. I mean, I think this is going to lead to some snowball effect, some network effect.
That's really interesting. We talk about network effects when we talk about Palo Alto and Silicon Valley, but in this, I'm really interested in what you say about that, because it was exactly the question I asked 4 CEOs on a panel yesterday, and they said no, they think it's going to be incremental. And I was talking about hockey sticks and exponential growth. You're talking about that as well with a snowball.
Absolutely.
From the CEOs I spoke to, and again, it's just a small sampling, they think actually it's just going to be more of a steady game rather than that one moment when this networking effect suddenly has this exponential growth.
No, I think it's going to accelerate massively because, by the way, I think in the mind of CEOs, this transition is going to happen. This is a 95% probability or something like that.
Did Dubai change that?
I think it reinforced it only. I think overall people feel it was a success, the last COP, and this is inevitable. And therefore, no matter what you think and what as a CEO, you have to prepare for this new world. And if you don't believe it, but you supply companies who say this is important and you need to be net zero, you have to be net zero also for shareholders' perspective. So I think people are underestimating it's going to accelerate through this network effect.
Part of the problem last year was the macro, and we saw it on the inflation side, that even these green projects that looked promising were suddenly unprofitable because of inflation, that the cost of all the materials sourced. When it comes to insurance and reinsurance, we've seen massive repricing in recent years, and the expectations seem to be that premiums are going to keep on going up because of the long shadow of inflation. What do you predict for this year in terms of that inflation story?
Yeah, so I cannot talk about the latest renewal, which was 1st of January, but there's some market observers, and I can say what they say, and the prices are stabilizing basically at the level. And of course, the insurance and reinsurance industry had to catch up with the number of losses that we had over the last few years. It was underpriced. A lot of these natural catastrophe risks have increased. We have the statistics. It's very significant. So they had to increase. And to a certain extent, interesting enough, insurance premium is sort of a feedback to society about climate change. It's the first time we see a bill. And of course, the reaction is negative. People are like, oh, what is this? But what is this? This is the bill of what we have collectively done to the planet. And it's coming back in form of an insurance premium. And ideally, it would also lead to some thought about where to build in the future, how to build in the future. This was always an important function of insurance, to give feedback loops on the risk.
It's an important function of insurers to actually offer insurance too, and for reinsurance companies to be there in the backdrop. And there's a geopolitical story that has been kicking around that a few days back, this was reported that reinsurers were injecting cancellation clauses into policies in the event of a broader Middle East conflict. Are you one of the reinsurance companies doing that?
I'm not specifically commenting on that, but what is important is a misunderstanding of what reinsurance and insurance can do. It's an insurable risk is a risk that is random, can happen everywhere in the world, and where you get some diversification effect. And since the beginning of insurance, war has been excluded. There's some very specific small war coverage that can be done, but war is not an act of God. It's not a random act. It's a human-induced act, and is therefore technically not insurable. And so, yes, war has never really been insured and will never be. And there's some reactions happening in the insurance industry about that.